Hey guys, it's Thursday, or as my friends and I like to call it, Friday Eve. So it's the last day of the week for traditional. We'll all have a virtual call tomorrow, and I'll post those times again today, sometime today. I have a meeting this morning on my plan time, so it may be a little bit later before I post your morning message, okay? Okay, so we are going to start off with chapter 15, Dip Makes a Promise today. So where we left off yesterday, Frank, we know that they stole from the store and he was, on the bus with the paper over his face and all this kind of stuff. And then he got this real suspicious kind of attitude and he and Joni were talking outside. So we're going to find out what that was all about and see what happens next. You guys thought they were on an adventure right now? Wait till you see what happens in these few chapters. We're going to read 3 today because one of them is kind of short. All right, chapter 15, Dip Makes a Promise. That night, we're sitting around under the stars with our stomachs full. Worm has put away her book for once, and she's sitting there with her chin on her knees, staring at the little campfire Dip built. Every now and then, she glances over at me like she wants to say something important, but she never does. I figure whatever it is can wait. Frank and Joni have wandered off somewhere, and it's just the 3 of us, and I'm thinking how much I want this to go on forever, sailing that old prairie schooner across America and camping by the side of the road every night, and eating hamburgers cooked over an open fire, and feeling like we're in a place of our own. I'm thinking how my buddy Kevin would have loved this adventure, and I wish he was here, and Grim and Graham too, but even that doesn't hurt too much. I'm feeling so good. As long as we're on the bus, the only thing that matters is where we go tomorrow. Yesterday doesn't count, or the day before that. The only thing that matters is me and Worm are safe. I'm thinking how lucky we are right this moment, and how no matter what happens next, I wouldn't trade this night for anything. Dip, he's staring up at the sky for a long time, and then he goes, "Guess what I see up there?" Worm won't guess, but you can tell she's listening. "I see a girl about your age," he says to her. "See that glow from the Milky Way? That's her hair. Those other stars are her sword and shield. She's fighting a battle, a really important battle. Life and death, I'll bet." Worm looks up at the sky to where he's pointing. "What happens to her?" she asks. "I'm not sure exactly," Dip says, "but in the end she wins because her heart is true. That much I know." Me, all I see is a bunch of stars, but I don't mind. If Worm can see her dreams come true in the sky, that's good enough. And it makes me think how cool an old dude like Dip really is to figure it out and show her where to look. When Worm starts nodding off, Dip says it's time to turn in. "We have a long day tomorrow," he says. "I expect we'll see Wyoming before the sun goes down. We'll check out the Bighorn Mountains and Yellowstone, maybe go fishing on the Wind River, if we can find some bait. Sound okay with you?" It all sounds cool to me. Worm is sound asleep with her backpack on, and when I pick her up to carry her inside the prairie schooner, she's as light as a feather, like gravity doesn't count when you're not awake. That's when Dip goes, "Oh my." The way he says it makes the short hairs tingle on the back of my neck. Something is wrong. I can feel it all over. "Somebody let the air out of the tires," Dip says. "Now, why would they do that?" Yeah, why would they do that? He's crouched down in the dark, staring at how the prairie schooner is sitting low on her rims. I've got Worm asleep in my arms, and I don't know what to do. Flat tires are no big deal to fix, but like Dip says, why would somebody do that? I get this terrible, empty feeling like they just let the air out of me, too. Dip gets up and says, "Wait here." And he goes into the bus and turns on the lights. I can see him in there checking things out. And then he picks up Frank's newspaper. You can tell something has got his attention. His big friendly face kind of shuts up, and I don't know what he's thinking, but whatever he's reading in the paper has made him different. Then he looks through the bus window out to where I'm standing in the dark, and suddenly I know what's in that newspaper. What is it? Dip comes out real slow, and when his feet are on the ground, he looks at how the worm is sound asleep in my arms, and he goes, You've got $10,000 on your head, Max. That's the reward for information leading to your apprehension. That means capture. And for the recovery of the girl. Then he stops and gives out a big sigh. And when he speaks again, his voice sounds small and old. I knew you were in trouble. I didn't know it was trouble that big. I don't know what to do or say. It's like my feet are sinking into the ground and the sky is pressing me down and the air feels thick and scratchy in my lungs. I read what her stepfather had to say, he says, tapping the newspaper. You better tell me what really happened. I can't, I say, whispering. Not with her right here. She can't think about it right now, even when she's asleep. Dip stares at me a long time, and then he nods to himself and says, well, I guess I've got to trust my instincts on this. I'm not going to turn you in, son, but somebody else might. That's when the flashing blue lights come gliding into the campground. Oh, it's my fault, Dip says when he sees those lights. I never should have let that con man on my bus. My feet finally come loose, and I turn and see the police car coming around the curve of the campsites. As it passes under a streetlight, there's Joni in the back seat and Frank in the front. He's showing the cop which way to go. I don't know what you're going to do, Dip is saying, but you better do it fast. Then he shoves some money in my shirt pocket. He pats Worm on the head and he goes, trust yourself, Max. I'll see you again someday. That's a promise. The next thing I know, I'm running off into the night with a girl in my arms away from the prairie schooner and the cop car and the campground. I don't know where I'm running or why exactly. All I know is this. Worm is still asleep and she's not ready to wake up yet. My brain has stopped thinking. The only thing inside my head is run, boy, run. So now I guess we've all kind of figured out what Frank and Joni are doing. Obviously, when he read the paper, he saw that there was a $10,000 reward leading to Max's capture or apprehension. Same thing. So, of course, he's trying to get that money because, like Dip said, he's a con man. Chapter 16. Sometimes the truth is just plain stupid. The thing about running at night, you can't even see your feet, let alone the ground. You can't see the holes or the rocks or the old roots grabbing at you. The only thing to do is run faster. Fast enough so that nothing sticks. Fast enough so the shadow things can't find you. Fast enough so the dark is cool in your face and you feel like running forever. It's a train that finally stops me. I'm coming down this hilly area of woods and brush, dodging around low tree branches like I've got radar or something. Like I can feel things without actually seeing them. And then I'm out of the woods and into the open, picking up speed, flying downhill like I'm an airplane, getting ready to take off, and Worm is my only passenger, and she's still asleep. Ahead of me, something big is moving, and that's when I put on the brakes and hear the screechy groan of a train grinding along the tracks. Not going fast, but kind of bumping along, kerchunk, kerchunk, like no hurry, no problem. There's just enough light from the stars so I can see the long, dark cars moving against the sky. They're so heavy and slow and solid, it looks like they'll roll on forever, as far as the track will go. Excuse me. Worm wakes up and puts her hands around my neck. I dreamed we were flying, and I wasn't afraid, she says. I figure she'll ask me about what happened and why we ran away from Dip and the prairie schooner, but it's like she already knows and doesn't want to talk about it right now. Hold on tight, I say, and she hangs on with all her might. I start jogging along beside the track like we're in a race or something, me against the train, which turns out to be going faster than I thought because I can barely keep up. In the movies, you see dudes jump on moving trains like it was nothing. Believe me, it's not that easy, especially if you've got a girl in your arms and you've only got one free hand. First, you have to run exactly as fast as the train is going, even though you're slipping in the gravel by the tracks and scared you'll slide under the wheels. Then you've got to grab hold of something and yank yourself aboard and not fall. By the time we finally climb onto this low car part of the train, I'm so scared I almost wet my pants. But Worm acts like she wasn't worried, like she knew I could do it. You're amazing, she says, and sounds like she really means it. Yeah, right, the amazing dork. When my heart settles down, I look around. There's this big piece of farm machinery chained down to the car, but plenty of room for me and Worm to stretch out. We're barely settled when the train starts to pick up speed, And then we're rolling around this long curve out into the countryside. I can't see much except to tell it's pretty flat and wide open. Funny thing about the stars, when you're looking straight up, they seem to hold still in the sky, even if you're on a moving railroad car. Like the stars won't change no matter what happens. A long time ago, some old dinosaur, he probably looked up and saw the same stars, mostly. And I bet he had big feet and a small brain, just like me. I know I should feel terrible about getting run off the prairie schooner and having to leave the dippy hippie behind, but instead I'm feeling good. They didn't get us, and they won't be sending Worm back to the Undertaker, not so long as we're on this train. And it's like the running part is fun, as long as you don't get caught. Pretty dumb, huh? Well, sometimes the truth is just plain stupid, and you can't help it. Before long, the train settles into this rhythm, rattling along the tracks, ker-chunk, rackety-roo, ker-chunk, rackety-roo. For a long time, Worm doesn't say anything, but I can tell she's thinking hard. And finally she goes, I wasn't really asleep when the cop car came. As usual, I go, huh? I just pretended, she says, because I knew Max the Mighty would come to the rescue. Suddenly, my ears feel hot and my throat is thick, and part of me is mad, but I don't know why. Cut it out, I say. There's no such thing. But Worm won't stop. I heard stories about you, she says, insisting. Kids talking, grown-ups too. It makes me feel weird to think that people talk about me when I'm not around, and I bet most of it is lies. They said your father killed your mom. Is that part true? I go, yeah. And then I'm not going to say anything else because I hate talking about it, but I'm looking at Worm and seeing how the stars make her face glow, and it's like a knot unties inside me, and all of a sudden, I want to tell her everything. It happened when I was a little kid, I say. My dad got in a fight with my mom, and he grabbed her around the neck, and he wouldn't let go, even though I tried to stop him. Then afterward, he put me to bed and told me it was all a bad dream. But I busted out a window and shouted for the police, and that's how he got sent to prison. Worm doesn't say anything. She's waiting for me to finish. For a long time, I never wanted to think about it until Kevin and me got to be Freak the Mighty. Then he showed me how remembering can be a great invention of the mind. He said you can't forget the bad stuff just because it's part of who you are. He was a really cool guy, huh? The coolest, I say. He even saved my life once. Yeah, what happened? Worm wants to know. Killer Kane, that's what they call my father. They let him out of prison, which really flipped me out. And then one night he broke into my bedroom and kidnapped me. How come you didn't fight him? I shrug. It was like I was paralyzed or something. I just couldn't. Worm nods, and I'm pretty sure she's thinking about the Undertaker and how he makes her feel the same way, like she can't do anything to stop him. Anyhow, Kevin found out where Killer Kane took me, and he figured a way to get me out of there. He filled his squirt gun with soap and vinegar and curry powder and stuff and sprayed it at my old man, and we got away. Pretty smart, Worm says. Yeah, I lost it when Kevin died. It was like the whole world died, you know? And then I started thinking about all the cool things we did, and I wrote some of the stuff down. And then I wasn't angry anymore, just sad. I still think about him all the time. Worm sees how bad I'm feeling, and she takes hold of my hand and gives it a squeeze and then lets go. After a while, she says, you think when you die, you really go to heaven? I hope so. Yeah, she says, me too. Okay, so first of all, never try to jump on a train running beside it. Very dangerous. But obviously, this is a fictional story, so pretty smart for them to get away. I mean, that was good, quick thinking on their part. So now they're on a train, and remember earlier in the book, it said they were in Wyoming. So that's actually close to Montana. So are they going to make it? Are they going to make it all the way? Are they going to get caught on the train? Let's see what happens in chapter 17, the horrible howl, like a dog howling. The rackety-roo of the train makes my eyelids heavy, and even though I'm supposed to stay awake and keep watch over the worm, I fall asleep almost as soon as she does. When I wake up again, the stars are gone, and there's this orange blob on the horizon where the sun is coming up. It kind of looks like hot and melted and really old somehow, like I'm looking back in time. Worm is sleeping on my rolled up jacket. She's holding her book tight against her chest like she always does. Probably most girls her age would throw a fit if they went to bed without a pillow, But Worm never complains about anything. When you think about what happened to her in the last few days, that's pretty amazing. And it makes me feel even better about being a notorious criminal with a $10,000 reward on my head. They say you can go blind if you stare at the sun too long, but I can't help it. It's like there's this message written in the sunrise and I can't quite make it out. Finally, I quit looking and closed my eyes, but I can still see the bright orange spot kind of burning a hole in my brain. And my brain, which is pretty irritated with me, goes, "This isn't a cool adventure, you moron. You messed up big time. The whole world thinks you're a monster for kidnapping an 11-year-old girl. They'll hunt you down like a rabid dog. The smart thing would be to split. Let Worm find her real father on her own. Just leave her and run for your life. Keep on running until they forget all about the son of Killer Kane, until you forget about yourself." So he's thinking about that in his brain, okay? I tell my brain to shut up, but it won't listen. "Leave the kid," it says. "She'll be better off without you. Somebody else can take care of her, somebody smarter and stronger than you are. You are not a hero. Max the Mighty doesn't exist." "I know that," I shout out loud, and that wakes up Worm. She yawns and looks around and gives me a big smile. Right off, she says, "You know what? I bet this train goes forever. I bet it goes to the end of the world." All I can think to say is, "I don't know. I guess so," which is a flat out lie. Even a total bonehead like me knows the world is round and you can't get to the end. You just keep going around and around. You never get there. When the sun gets a little ways higher, the train starts to slow down and the clackety-clackety noises change. We start passing big buildings and you can tell we're getting close to a city. I'm thinking maybe there'll be a train station and I'll be able to buy us something to eat, a hot dog or a hamburger or even a candy bar, anything, because all of a sudden I'm really, really hungry. But when the train finally stops, there isn't any train station or any food. We're in the middle of this huge junkyard. All these cars crushed up into rusty cubes of steel. They're stacked 5 or 6 high in row after row. A wicked-looking barbed wire fence surrounds the junkyard, and I'm thinking, who would want to steal a squished-up car? That's when Worm says, "Good doggy, good doggy." I go, "Huh?" And then I see the dog. It's a really mangy-looking animal without a collar or a tag, and it looks like it's been rolling in the dirt or worse. From the way the ribs stick out, it doesn't get fed regularly. And when Worm puts out her hand, the dog starts edging closer, keeping low like dogs do when they're afraid. "Oh," Worm says, "can we keep it?" I go, "Be careful." "I always wanted a dog," Worm explains, "but you know who said no." The dog is growling deep in its throat, and its eyes don't look friendly. I grab hold of Worm's jacket and pull her back just as the dog snaps at her hand. "Hey," she says, "you scared him." But the growling dog doesn't look scared anymore. It makes a high yipping noise, and then things start to happen fast because the yipping was like a signal. And now 3, 4, 5 wild dogs come out of nowhere and leap into the railway car heading right for us. "Get back," I yell, grabbing Worm around the waist. I climb onto the piece of farm equipment that's chained to the railway car, and the wild dogs are leaping up and snapping their fangs, lunging at my feet. One of the dogs grabs hold of Worm's sleeves and tears her jacket. "Ah!" she screams, "Get it off, get it off." The sleeve rips and the dog falls, but it doesn't matter because the rest of the dogs are scrambling up on one another's back, fighting to get higher, wanting to rip us to shreds. It's like they can smell the blood inside us, and it doesn't matter that we're human. All that matters is we might be good to eat. Worm is crying and holding tight to me like she thinks I can save her, but there's nowhere to go. We're surrounded, and now the dogs are crawling up the other side of the farm equipment. They'll be able to jump on us from the top. I want to yell for help, but my throat is squeezed so tight, all that comes out is a pathetic little squeak. Then a dog has me by the ankle, and I'm trying to kick it loose, but it won't let go. And Worm is screaming and kicking and hanging on to me all at the same time. I figure this is it. We're going to die. When all of a sudden, this loud, horrible howl fills the air. "Ow!" And this scrawny little dude with a big stick leaps in the middle of the dogs, swinging the stick and howling at the top of his lungs. "Ow! Ow!" He's screaming and laughing and yelling like a total lunatic. smacking at the dogs with his stick, kicking them with his feet. The dogs don't know what he is, and they start yelping and ducking away from his stick. And one by one, they jump off the railway car and run off into the junkyard, crawling on their bellies to get under the barbed wire fence. The last dog makes a lunge at his stick, but the wild man raises it high, and the dog turns tail and runs off. And that's how we got saved by Hobo Joe. And that's the end of chapter 17. So they've made it onto this train in Wyoming. Wild dogs tried to attack them. And now we've got a new character, Hobo Joe, that has saved them. So we will get into who Hobo Joe is tomorrow. Remember, you'll have a Google Meet tomorrow for each class, and I'll post those times here in just a little bit, okay? Chapter 18 is called Keep Us Safe from You-Know-Who, and we know who that is, right? So somebody or something maybe is going to keep them safe. We'll see. Have a wonderful, terrific Thursday, and I will see you guys, all of you guys, in the morning on whatever time our Google Meet is. Have a great day. Bye.